post name, so it will work the same, like it will go to resolve, and after identify the
Yeah,
IP
after
address.
resolving the IP address,
Mhm.
it takes in account that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Fine. So next we have something called tags. Okay, and I'll tell you what tags is. Okay. Basically, to make your configuration more visually appealing and in terms of understanding it visually easily, they have developed this idea of having tags. Okay. Now, technically, they don't do anything except identification visually. Okay. They you don't allow anything based on tags. Okay. You don't block anything using tags. It's just to uh, have a better way to look at the configuration, and just hold till I complete this. Okay. Because somewhere in starting you might feel like, okay, what is he talking about? Okay. But once you see it, you will be like, okay, we get it. So so tags. Okay. Suppose I add a tag here. Okay. Now what you specify here is just a name, color, and you can add a comment. Okay. Suppose what I want is, like, we have collab team. Okay. Specifying us certain IP addresses, collab team asking us to create certain rules. Okay. Then what you can do is you can create a tag, like suppose I create a tag collab team. Okay. Now I give it a color. Okay. Whatever color you want to choose, I'll preferably, do something easily identifiable. Let's say brown. Okay. Now, in comment, I'll say stuff related to collab team request. Okay. Fine. So I made this, and I can make other rules like this as well. Okay. Now, what happens is, like, suppose collab team gives me an IP address. They say, okay, this is an IP address which we will need to reference again and again in security policies. I'll say, okay, I'll add it. Like, maybe I'm just taking an example. CUCM IP. Okay. And they tell me a range. Suppose, like, we have our CUCM or whatever, they are managing. They say that IP address, uh, I'll just let range. Okay. They say like 172.16. They have these servers from 172.16.0 to 172.16. Suppose 4. They have 4 servers like this. Okay. Now, see, what I can do is I can add tag here, because I maybe down the lane I don't remember what this is. Okay. Because I'm not a collab guy. Okay. So I can add this tag here. This helps me visually identify that this address object might have been created because collab team requested some rule where we need to reference this IP again and again. Okay. So I'll click OK. Okay. Now see, what's the difference here? Do you see the difference? You can visually easily identify, if you know that collab team has the brown color. For all the things related to collab team, we have the brown color. You know that this tag specifies that this is basically created something because of collab team's request. Okay. You can even have address groups. You can have it at various places. Okay. I'll show you. Like, suppose I created this rule because collab team requested. Okay. Now what I can do is I can add a tag to this as well. The benefit, you see here, let's just comment it. I think after that it shows up here. Okay, or maybe the tags, the tags column is unchecked. So sorry, not commit is not required. So okay, just add the column if it is not there. Now see, you can easily identify that this rule must have been created because of some request by the collab team. Are you getting my point? It's a way to visually organize your configuration. Okay, and it's not just applicable for security policy. Suppose you did some NAT because collab team requested access to certain things. You can create a NAT policy, and I'll show you. You can add tags there as well. See, it's almost at a lot of places. The whole benefit is like you can have visually identification based on some keywords. Okay. Also, another benefit is like suppose there is collab team facing some issues of access of something, and I just want to do a global search based on tag. Even this is applicable for QS policy. Okay, so you can add tags here. You can add it to policy based forwarding. Okay, you can add to decryption. Okay, so you can add to all of these policies. Now suppose I feel like collab team is facing some issue, and I want to search for all the things related to collab team. Okay, so what I can do is, if you see here, you can do a global find. Okay, to go here, you can click this and maybe search for this. Okay. When you do search for this, this tag will help you identify that we have created one thing here, one thing here, one thing here. Okay, so it helps you out in easily finding out and tagging things basically. Are you getting the point? Like, what's the use of it? Okay, so let's see it here. Okay, you can create multiple tags. Okay, like here, maybe to identify people as well, like maybe all the rules related to CEO, I'll put it in purple color so that I can easily identify that. Okay. So tags can be used to visually search or find objects. Okay, like you can give a color, you can give a name. Okay, rules, objects, and all these different security policies and various other things. This tag option is almost at every other page. You can add even multiple tags. It's not just you can give one tag. You can add multiple tags to the same object. Okay, and once you do that, what happens is, if you use multiple tags, then first tag is used to identify that object colorfully. Like, suppose suppose I give this lot of tags. Okay, like some other tags. Let's create it. And I get whatever, maybe yellow. Okay. So see, if I go to this, and if I specify this as well here, okay, you can specify multiple tags to one address object or one security policy. Now here visually only brown color is visible. You cannot give both. So order matters. Okay, if I remove this from the first and add this here, if I click OK, see, now it's shown as yellow. So the color shown below the object or below the security policy is directly dependent on the first color that you add here in the tag. Okay. So see, multiple tags can use same color. if an item has multiple tags with different colors, then first tag color will be displayed. Okay, so order matters in adding tags. Like, see, this configuration is without tags and this configuration is with tags. Tell me what is more visually appealing, right? It's more visually appealing with tags. You can easily find out, like, like, okay, this black represents CEO, so this must be some rule related to CEO and things like that. Okay, clear? And it's up to you. If you don't like tags, you can leave them as it is. They don't have any direct effect on security policies or any other object. Okay. Any doubts in this?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, next thing, let's talk about services. Okay. And you see here, we can add a region. If we feel like you need to add a region, I'll just quickly go through that because we have already discussed it. Okay. So I'll click add. I'll show you something. Okay. Like I can give, suppose I have addresses, okay, which belong to a particular country, and maybe they are not getting selected by Palo Alto automatically because of their dynamic list. So suppose I have a list of Chinese IP addresses. Okay. So what you can do is you can select China. Okay. You can add your addresses here. So in whichsoever rule, if like suppose if in whichsoever rule, if we mention the region China, these addresses are going to get added automatically. Okay. Also, you can add the latitude, longitude. This will be just applicable for better showing you in application command control and autofocus, where we have the world map showing us the source destination of traffic. So you can alter and add certain things in that region related stuff. Okay, so it's just for that. Like I was moving to services. Okay, now what is services? See, sometimes you might want to create rules based on port number. Okay, although Palo Alto recommends that it's best if you utilize these things least as less as possible, because if you allow and deny based on service object, it will be allowing based on layer 4 information. So it's not actually effectively utilizing the next generation capabilities of the firewall. So preferably do it, use it less, okay, or use it along with things like use service object for a certain port number, but add application ID onto it. Okay, so that it remains next generation as well. Okay, or else if you just use object, okay, then and if you just create service object and utilize that in security policy and allow deny based on that, then evasive applications might utilize this service based rules to exploit things. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Okay, and we'll do it practically. So suppose, okay, like currently we have actually a very general rule here in the security policy. We have a very general rule saying like allow everything that is going from this under zone to DMZ zone, right? So right, very generic rule. You don't make rules like this in production, okay, because we are saying source this, we are saying any user.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
your voice is breaking. Anyone facing the same issue?
Okay. Is it better now? So, uh, like I was telling you that this security policy rule, source, destination, we don't use any app ID, we don't use any URL category or anything. This is very generic rule, right? Uh, Suppose on this Win3, I have FTP services hosted. Okay. Now, currently, if you see, if I try to ping, it should be working. Okay, sorry. This Win2, Win3. Did we have anything here? I think it must be the firewall blocking it. Everything seems okay. It was working as well. Like we are not even. Okay, sorry. We had created this. It's affecting it because we. It's not based on the virtual router. It's going based on this policy-based forwarding rule and forwarding it somewhere within it 1/3. So sorry. Let's delete this. This is what it is. That's what I was wondering. Like, we have not done anything yet. Very simple. Okay. So, policy-based forwarding was stopping it. Okay. Like it was allowing Win2 to go from here to here, but when the reply came back here, it was sending it somewhere else. Okay, because of the policy-based forwarding rule. So it was not going to. Okay. Fine. So it's good that we checked it before, because or else I would have been like confused, like why service got it stuck. Okay, so see, it's now pinging. Okay, fine. So we have the rule very generic between these two. Like we have allowed everything. Okay. Now on this Win3 machine, okay, I'll install a FTP software. Okay, we just have a folder on the desktop for this. Okay, so I've hosted FTP here. Okay, now let me add a file to the FTP server. So I'll just add like the path. Maybe I'll add this picture. Let's say this penguin picture. Okay. Okay. So path, I'll give it my pictures. Okay. We have my picture. Let me copy this from here. It would be easy. Okay. Sample picture slash, I'll say this file name. Okay. So basically, I've now hosted this penguin's picture in the FTP server. Okay. So suppose we want to have between this underzone and DMZ, we want to allow things, but we want to allow just based on FTP's port number. Okay. We don't want to allow everything. Then what you can do is you can go to the object. Okay. You see here there are two predefined services. One is HTTP, another is HTTPS, and if you see there, you get the port numbers of this. Okay. So suppose I add, let me give some name. And say maybe destination port 2021. Okay. For TCP. And say okay. Okay. Now what you can do is you can have this service object mentioned in the security policy. Also, you can have a service group in which you can mention multiple service objects. It's just like address and address group, just like that. For services, we have service group. Okay. So if you go to policies, okay, and security policy, in here in this service tab, here you can add this service which we just created. Okay, and if you have forgotten and you want to quickly add a service, you can use this option as well to create a service directly from here. Okay. So we have created, I'll just mention it here now. So it's still allowed, but now what we have done is we have said source zone under destination zone DMZ. Only for FTP service you are allowed. Okay. So once I click commit, I won't be able to ping from Win2 to Win3. Okay. Ping won't work because now we have specifically mentioned port number 2021. Okay. So if I go to the Win2 machine, open up the browser and mention like FTP ://10.0.2.11. Okay. You see here, okay, we are able to open FTP services from this Win3. Okay, and we can even check it out from the session option. We just SSH to the firewall for that. If I do show session all, you see that we have established FTP session, okay, in which our device 10.0.1.11 utilized a port from the dynamic range 49158, used protocol number 6, that is TCP, and we have not translated it to anything, so that's why it's still same here. Okay, like this represents the translated IP and port pair, and destination 10.0.2.11, port number 21 in the DMZ zone, and again we have not translated even the destination. Okay, so this is source original, this is source translated, this is destination original, this is destination translated. Okay, so you see we have an active flow. Okay, and if I click on this, I should be able to download that file as well. Okay, so my point is like service object is just to have you create those. You see here, it's made a request and established a connection on this. Okay, here for FTP data. Now, see, we have not utilized app ID yet, but you see still app ID working and identifying the application, okay, and showing us in session table. So service object, basically service definitions are assigned ports. It limits the ports that application can use, okay. Suppose I want to have a service object, you can also have a service object like this for all the port range. There are these two service, HTTP and HTTPS, predefined services. Okay, and then you can mention after you have created the service object, you could mention this in the service/URL category. Okay, clear? Okay, and also we could add these tags related things here as well if you feel like. You know. But here, see, we have not specifically said FTP as identified by app ID. We have just made an object, and it's just like creating a rule, just like the traditional firewall. Okay. So it's not recommended to have rules like this in Palo Alto. Okay. It would be like, you know, buying a Mercedes and driving it like a Maruti. Okay. There's no benefit of spending that much money if you're just creating rules like this. Okay. And let's move on. Other piece. Okay. NAT, as you know, the job of NAT is to translate IP address, okay, from one IP address to another. And we have two types of NAT, source NAT and destination NAT. Firstly, let's talk about source NAT today. Okay. You know, in Cisco, you call it static NAT, dynamic NAT, and PAT, right? This is one-to-one mapping, right? And then dynamic, we used to create a ACL for source, okay, and we used to create a NAT pool for like, you know, translated IP. We used to take IP from any IP from the ACL, match it up to an NAT pool IP. Okay, so this was the public IP list, right? And then we used to send them out. So that was dynamic NAT. Okay, static NAT, dynamic NAT, and then there is PAT. Okay, so this was like when we created the ACL and we said like this interface, utilize this interface and send it out, right? Now, problem, not the problem actually, you know, like they have renamed it here, okay? Static NAT, they call it static IP, okay? One-to-one fixed translation, it's same concept, okay? If you have any doubts, you can let me know, okay? Source IP address changes, okay? And source port remains unchanged in static NAT, right? Then you have the option to make it bidirectional. We'll discuss what is bidirectional. Okay. Then you have dynamic NAT. Okay, this we will discuss. Don't worry about this right now. Dynamic IP is same one-to-one translation. You not one-to-one, actually many-to-many. Fine. You translate the private source IP from an ACL to an NAT pool. Here you can mention that using an address group. Okay, or you can mention that using individual IP address or a whole subnet. Then you have dynamic IP and port. That is basically the PAT. Okay, here they call it DIP. Okay, in which multiple people utilize the same public IP and go out with different source port numbers. Okay, fine. So any doubts in this, or any CCNA doubts you have? Okay, I'll move to the configuration then for NAT. Okay. Like in our scenario, what I'm going to do, and it's a little bit complicated. Uh, I could have made a simpler topology, but the thing is, like, ultimately, you will need access of the real internet, not just the uh, lab environment internet. Okay, I could have made a topology and maybe created a server here and gave public IP here, and then we can do that. Okay, but the problem with that is, like, when you want to test app ID, you cannot have a test environment or lab environment and host facebook.com or google.com here within your lab environment. So you have to connect this to a real internet. So how have I done that, and how you can do that as well? Is if you see, just consider, don't think of this as a cloud, just think of this as a switch, okay, which is bridging me to my physical network, my home physical network, in which I have this Wi-Fi router connected actually to the internet. Okay. So the public IP is actually here. Okay, it's not here, and there is no way that I can actually terminate this physical connection on a virtual machine, right? Where would I plug it? Okay, so you cannot basically take this internet connection, plug it in Palo Alto directly. There is no way. Okay. So what you see here, or what I have here, is uh, this way my laptop is, okay, from which I'm accessing firewall, okay, through the management interface. Till now, we have not utilized this Ethernet 1/3, okay, which is part of our this Bahar zone, and we'll utilize it to go out. So now, see, if you talk about this particular router, okay, it just knows about this network. Okay, it knows about just 192.168.0.0 subnet. Okay, and then it has a default route pointing towards the internet. Okay. Now, if you look currently, what I have here is, like, if suppose this guy tries to ping, okay, something on the real internet, it cannot reach that. Why? I'll tell you. Uh, if this guy sends traffic using 10.0.1.11, okay, the traffic here comes with a source IP of 10.0.1.11. We have a default route pointing here as well on Ethernet 1/3, which we had done in the virtual router. I'll just show you. Okay, so we had this default route which we created earlier, like some days back, in which we had mentioned that go out Ethernet 1/3. Next hop IP is 192.168.0.1, which is the actual physical router. Okay, this IP is here. So see, if this guy sends traffic and Palo Alto doesn't do NAT, what happens is, when the packet reaches to this my home Wi-Fi router, source IP address is 10.0.1.11. Okay, it's going to look at the destination just like this guy used the default route to route it out to this router, it will use the default route to point it and send it here. Okay, but the return traffic can never come back. Why? When the return traffic comes back, okay, this router doesn't know about these networks 10.0.1.0 or 2.0. Okay, so this guy is actually doing NAT. That's why my internet is working, but it cannot send traffic back to 10.0.1.11 because there's no way that this my home Wi-Fi router is we do some routing and make it understand this. So basically, I'm not able to ping the actual public places. Okay, and if you want to maybe have a look at this later even. Okay, just take a screenshot, save it with you. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know even later. Okay. So basically, until you do NAT on Palo Alto and modify these subnets, but this is my home Wi-Fi router, so it won't understand that. Okay, this is my home Wi-Fi router. Okay, I think Digisol or something. It never. It's this guy. These people. How good they are at routing. Okay. So we don't need to use routing because we will do NAT here. Okay. My point here is that until I do NAT on the Palo Alto and alter these IPs and modify it to this IP, because if you send with sourced with this, then this router is going to reply you back, right? Just like it replies back to my PC. But until I do NAT on my Palo Alto, okay, leave this NAT aside. Don't worry about whether this NAT is happening or not, because this is not for you, right? This is already happening on your home router. Okay, what we are going to do is we're going to just modify this from this source IP to this source IP while doing NAT on Palo Alto. Okay, and give it some time for I'll just configure it and then we'll see it. Okay, so if you go to Win2 here, and you can see I have 10.0.1.1. That's the default gateway. I have 10.0.1.11. That's the IP of this, and I have even DNS servers configured, which are public. Okay. So if I try to ping 1.1.1.1, okay, Cloudflare IP, I'm not able to ping. Okay. Now, see, as of now, there are multiple things involved for this not being able to ping. Okay, there'll be security policies, there'll be NAT, there might be routing as well. So just to easily understand this, okay, I tell people that whenever you're learning, and this is applicable for again all the firewalls, okay, most commonly while doing things in a lab environment, when you're beginning with any firewall, okay, whether Palo Alto, Checkpoint, or ASA, whatsoever, there might be routing issues because of which you are not able to reach somewhere. Okay, now then there might be some security policy issues blocking you from accessing certain things, and then there will be third thing, sometimes NAT, network address translation. Okay, and because something requires NAT in our case. Okay, now my point is, like, don't mix them up while beginning to learn security of any firewall. Okay, because sometimes when you mix them up, I've seen students suffering in, like, because maybe the traffic is not getting sent because of routing, and they are busy checking out security policy and NAT. Okay. Similarly, sometimes they are very busy checking out security policy, whereas the issue is because of routing. So I'll tell you this. Uh, my recommendation is, take it one thing at a time. Okay, don't mess and mix everything. Okay, that's like my trainer recommendation. Okay, like for now, let's not get involved into routing. Okay, we have a default route, so the routing should not be an issue. Okay, and we can check that out from here. If I try to ping host 1.1.1.1, okay, I'll use the source address of 192.168.0.202, okay, and mention 1.1.1. It's just like selecting a source interface. If I try to ping that, you see I get a reply. Okay, I'm utilizing the source of 192.168.0.202, that is this IP address of Ethernet 1/3. Okay, clear? Since Palo Alto is able to ping here, right? This means we don't have any routing issue. Okay, and also we just checked in the Palo Alto that we have a default route pointing to the next hop actually, right? So routing is not an issue for us currently. Okay, let's not mix all these things together. Okay, another thing I'll do is I'll remove the security policies from picture right now. Okay, then we'll mix them up together, but once you understand NAT properly, then okay, most likely tomorrow. Okay, so for security policy, and this is my recommendation for learning any firewall. Okay, for security policy, I'll allow everything right now. Okay, you might say, how do I do that? Simple, either override this interzone default rule. Okay, okay, let's disable this rule. Okay, and we have two rules. Okay, intrazone allow, interzone deny, right? So I'll just go to this rule, I'll override it and change the action to allow. Okay, so once I have done that, okay, you see currently there is now no issue because of security policy, because whether you come for intrazone or whether you come for interzone, everything should be allowed. Clear? I'll commit this configuration. Okay, so my point is, now we have two things crossed off. They'll not interfere with our Win2 trying to go out and reach this guy. Okay, this is my recommendation, because I've seen people get mixed up and they don't learn the security policy properly, they don't learn the NAT properly, and everything is messed up. Okay, so we have these two things left aside now. No need to worry about these two things. Okay, clear? Now we'll just focus for now on NAT. Okay, so if Win2 is not able to ping this IP currently, it must be only because of NAT. Okay, you see I cannot ping still. Routing is okay, right? I can ping my default gateway from Win2, not an issue. Okay, and you can see this. Okay, we have interface management profile on all of these, so they'll respond to ping. If I try to ping my gateway 10.0.1.1, I get a reply. Okay, if I try to even ping 192.168.0.202, I get a reply, because this is the same firewall which knows about this subnet. Okay, If I try to ping 0.1, okay, that is this guy outside here, the Wi-Fi home Wi-Fi router, I'll not be able to see a response. Okay, why? Because when you send a ping request to this guy from Win2, he doesn't know where this 10.0.1.11 is. Okay, so who will it respond to? Are you getting my point? Okay, and we don't have any routing issue, any security policy issue for now. Okay, everything clear till now? I've tried to clean it up and keep it as simple as possible so that we focus on just NAT. Okay, so once we do NAT, you will be able to see that we'll be able to ping 192.168.0.1, as well as we'll be able to go out and ping this 1.1.1.1 or even google.com or anything else, and we will be able to open websites on even this PC. Okay, fine. So let's do NAT. Anything not clear till now, just ask me. Okay, fine. Let's go to NAT and I'll click add. Now see, they have kept very clean interface here. You can say NAT, give it a name, something, whatever you want. You can specify the source zone. Okay, I'll say when somebody comes from under zone or DMZ zone, whatever you want. Okay, so for now we are talking about Win2, which is in under zone. Okay, we can later on do it for even DMZ zone. Okay, so when somebody comes from this zone, and if they are trying to go out Bahar zone, okay, destination interface Ethernet 1/3, and we are not binding based on any service. We are not specifically allowing, disallowing, or doing NAT for a particular port number. Not allowing, disallowing, but actually not doing for a port number. We'll just send for everything. We'll specify source address, and that's the IP of Win2. Okay, or we could have mentioned it here manually as well. Okay, doesn't matter. So since we have that object, now let's utilize that. Destination we don't know because it will be going out on the internet, so there will be a lot of destinations. So this is the original packet information that we have. Okay, now in the translated packet tab, what type of translation are you trying to do? Static NAT, dynamic NAT, PAT? I'll say static NAT. Which address do you want it to be translated to? Okay, I'll say that is 192.168.0.202. Okay, fine, and I'll click OK. We will talk about that. Okay, bidirection we have left from the slide for now, right? We'll come back to that. Okay, so simple. I'll click commit, and let's see if we are able to go from Win2 out to the outside internet. Okay, okay, I'll go back to Win2 and see. Now if I try to ping 1.1.1, I'm able to ping. Have we changed any security policy thing from that time? No. We have we changed any routing related thing? No. So it was all stuck because of NAT till now. Okay, and we will be able to ping even 192 168.0.1, my home Wi-Fi router, it will respond as well. And if you go to the firewall and you do show session all, you see now what we are doing is, this is just the ping right here, 10.0.1.11. This is the IP address that I came with. Okay. This is just the ICMP sequence number, so leave it that, because obviously ping doesn't have a port number. Then it went for, it came from underzone. Protocol number, ICMP, that is 1 protocol number. So this source address, okay, was translated to 192.168.0.202. Okay, fine. And we left the sequence number of ping as it is. Okay. Destination IP was 192.168.0.1. Okay. From Bahar zone, we didn't alter anything related to destination because we are not doing any destination net. We are just doing source net. Okay. Fine. You can even check if I try to ping this. It will show you here. Okay. 10.0.1.11. Sequence number of ICMP is 1. We translated to this. Did we translate the destination? No. We just translated the source. Clear? Okay. And also, if you want, you can now browse websites on the Win2 PC. Okay. Google.com. Okay, so it's working. I'll click on news to prove that, okay, this is today's page. It's not some cached old page. COVID-19 is the current news all the time. So, okay. Although this browser is not that good for modern websites, so we have another browser. I'll install Mozilla here, or we could have Chrome. So I'll just install that because later on we'll need to browse website. Okay. Okay. So now it looks more like the modern Google page. There, that Internet Explorer didn't support website like that. Okay. Fine. So we have done static NAT now. Now I'll show you one more thing here. But in order to show that, instead of this PC, let me utilize this PC, okay? Because we have FTP installed and everything working here. So let's do that, okay? I'll just modify this. Instead of Win2, I'll just use Win3 DMZ zone. I'll modify the NAT policy because we don't have anything hosted on Win2, so I won't be able to show you in Win2. So I'll say original packet, okay, is coming from what? DMZ zone, going to Bahar zone. This doesn't change. Source address we can add win3. Okay, fine, and we can leave this as it is. Okay. Now, since this is a static NAT, obviously it is one-to-one translation, so you cannot have multiple source address or a subnet here and translate all that to one public IP, because that way it becomes dynamic NAT, or what you call PAT. Okay, so let's go to Win3 and try to check. Can we ping to outside? Yes. So NAT is working properly, right? Fine. Should I erase this?
Yes.
Fine. So consider this now. Okay. From Palo Alto firewall point of view, all this is public. Yeah. Right? Let's not this review. So I'll discuss something here. Okay. Now let's say, let's talk about a company which hosts some services within their premises. Okay, like suppose this is a company which is hosting some web servers, like maybe Google or somebody like that. Now what happens is, in this case, how does NAT work? Okay, the person initiating communication is outside, right, somewhere on the internet, right? And when they hit the public IP of this company, okay, you translate them to a private IP, right? Right? Has Google kept all of their servers on public IP? No. There must be some routers, firewalls on that. So what they do there as well is NAT. Okay. So when you hit their public IP, you get translated to one of the servers. There might be not this simple things. There will be load balancers and firewalls and a lot of other things. But from NAT perspective, if you look at it, when you hit this public IP, you get translated to this private IP, right? So that you can access these services hosted within their premises. Okay. This is what we call destination NAT. Okay. That if you try to hit this destination IP, will translate you to this destination. Okay. We are not talking about the source here. Source you cannot manipulate. Okay. Because the person coming to you is already out of your control. Okay. He's hosted somewhere else. Are you getting my point? Now, in Cisco, when you configure static NAT, okay, you might not have noticed, or maybe if you have gone through some Cisco security concepts of ASA and things, then you might have noticed it more. If you've just gone through CCNA, you might not have noticed that static NAT in Cisco is bidirectional. Okay, what you mean by that is it works both ways. Like if you try to go out, suppose this server initiates something and tries to go out anywhere, okay, their source get translates to this public IP and they go out, okay. But that same IP, because it's a one IP to one IP mapping, okay, when you hit this public IP, you also get translated to this. So it works both way. Means static NAT, when you do it in a Cisco environment, it works both as a source NAT as well as a destination NAT automatically. You don't have to do anything related to that. Okay. Although you didn't learn it in CCNA, but it works as a destination NAT as well. Okay. Static NAT one-to-one mapping works as a destination NAT as well. But in Palo Alto, they have this checkbox. Okay. Like when you create a static NAT, they give you this checkbox whether you want it to be bidirectional or not. Means whether you want it to work as a destination NAT as well or not. If you check this checkbox, then it is going to work as a destination NAT as well as a source NAT. If you don't check this checkbox, it's just going to work as a source NAT. Let me show it to you. Okay. See, suppose if I talk about my PC, okay, my laptop. In this topology, where am I? Somewhere here, right? And if I go to my browser and try to open ftp://192.168.0.202, okay, if I open that, what happens? I try to hit this Ethernet 1/3 IP. But does Palo Alto have any FTP services hosted onto their interface or into Palo Alto? No. But if I have bidirectional checkbox checked, it is going to do a destination NAT. When I hit this IP, it is going to translate me to this IP and send the packets further. And this FTP hosted here will open up on my laptop. Okay. Let's just demonstrate it practically rather than just talking about it. Okay. And then if you have any doubts, I'll take up that. So what I'm doing is I'm opening up my browser, okay, on my laptop. I'm trying to hit ftp://192.168.0.202. Okay, you can hit enter. It won't work because currently we have not checked that bidirection checkbox. So even if something hits this public IP or this IP on Ethernet 1/3, Palo Alto won't translate the destination to this IP. We have not done any destination NAT. Okay, so not opening. But if I go to this NAT policy and I say that this is a bidirectional static NAT, if somebody hits 0.202, you translate them to Win3 IP and send them in. Okay. Now this will involve security policy as well, but still, since we have everything allowed using security policy, and routing is not an issue because all the routes are directly connected, all the interfaces are directly connected. Okay, so firewall knows about them. So that's why routing and security is still out of the picture. Okay. See, now once it is bidirectional, if I refresh this page, where is this hosted? You know it is hosted here on Win3, right? And now if I open up this signings page, it opens up. Also, you can check using the CLI. If you do again do show session all, what you see here is that for FTP, okay, my laptop's IP address is this 192.168.0.2. I came from Bahar zone, protocol number 6, IP protocol number 6, because TCP is used. And you see, was my source translated here? No, right? I'm talking about FTP, okay? And I hit this public IP. It's not actually public IP, you know it. This destination port number and this destination IP, they translated me to 10.0.2.11 and kept the port number same. So here the destination is changing. The source is not changing, okay? So now I think you can read it from here and understand it, what I mean when I say that bidirectional option creates a destination NAT rule implicitly. So if you check this checkbox, it automatically creates a destination NAT rule. You don't need to create a destination NAT rule separately. I think I've made myself as clear as possible. Still, if you have any questions, let me know. These things are a little bit, brainstorming for beginning, but once you get hold of it, it's not that difficult to understand and work on them.
Sudhanshu, can we keep it for like a specific services only? Like
Yeah,
here
we
you have
can keep it for specific services because, like I told you, we have not yet involved the security policies. Okay.
Okay.
Currently, we are translating everything. Okay. But we could do it only for a particular port number as well. In the NAT rule, we could say that, I want to do it only for this service, not for any service. Also, we can make security policies saying that when somebody comes from Bahar zone, they are allowed to go to DMZ zone, but we can, make app ID rules that they are allowed to access only FTP. Are you getting my point? Like
Yes.
we can have these app ID rules. So since right now we have not touched those, so like I told you, take it one thing at a time for beginning. For now, we are just concentrating on NAT. If it gets stuck, it should get stuck just because of NAT, not because of security or routing. Yeah. No, see, here there is no ACL. This is your ACL. See, technically, it's not that. Why? I'll tell you. See, when the traffic comes, okay, when the packet comes, what is checked initially? You check the source zone, you do the forwarding lookup. But security policy is checked here, right? And if the security policy rejects the traffic, then whatever forwarding lookup you have done, it won't be of any use. But you cannot say that security policy is checked before, routing table lookup. Okay, routing table lookup is done here, security policy check is done here. Okay, but if it rejects, automatically you don't forward the packet. Okay. I think let's do dynamic NAT and PAT tomorrow. Okay.
Sudhanshu, yesterday I just asked you some questions.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't remember the exact one.
I will WhatsApp you.
Yeah. Okay. So see, you had a question like whether can we do PCNSE certification exam and this whether it would be a there are two questions. Okay, one was like, can Palo Alto be perfected in this much time, in like next 2 to 3 months? You can perfect it. It's just that you'll have to do lab properly, read the PANOS admin guide, and read all these small recommendations I'm making, like I was discussing for like we just saw this thing today. Okay, security policy tech note. So if you do all that, you should do complete this. And in fact,
Sudhanshu, your voice is breaking. We are not able to hear you.
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying like you can do complete Palo Alto in 2 months. Okay, it's just that you have to spend every day, like you have to sit religiously and like do it every day for like 2 hours, go through the concepts, go through the theory as well as practicals, then you should be able to do it. Okay. Your second question was like, is it a good time to do job switch? Okay. See, depends. Job switch, and by it depends, I don't mean to give you a diplomatic answer, but like uh, preferably, I'll tell you, the scenario currently is like if you jump into a company, okay, which is maybe a small to medium enterprise, okay, at this time they can face cash crunch, but like currently I think you are working with TechM, right? Right?
Yes.
Kiran?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's very unlikely that TechM or big names like Tata or these stable companies which have a rich cash reserve, okay, they'll face issues. Okay, so like from an economical point of view, it makes sense not to jump to small or medium enterprises if you are already working for a a very big name. Okay, but if you are getting switched from, suppose maybe Tech Mahindra to maybe Tata or Accenture or Infosys, like a branded company to a big branded company, where like that these companies are of same cadre, then it should not be an issue. Okay, like I'll tell you another thing. People have this in their mind, like, has COVID-19 affected the jobs in networking? No. Okay. During these past 2 months of lockdown, I've had students who have done their job search while during this period. Like they left job, they joined another job during this 2 months period. So almost you can say COVID-19 has had negligible effect on jobs in networking. Okay. Okay. And if you
Okay.
want clarification on some point, you can. Ask me.
Okay, if I am having any doubts, I will ask you. Then.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
You get the main point, right? Like
Yes.
sometimes because these days, you know, there you might get a company ABCD where there's just like 20, 30 employees or 40 employees. They might face a cash crunch and say bye bye to you. So even if they are paying a higher package, I would recommend to, just go for the money. Okay, don't do that.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Sudhanshu.
okay, welcome.
Bye.
Fine. I'll end the meeting.
Yes.
Bye everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidyanshu.